Welcome to the Kiwi Wedding Podcast. Today on the podcast we have Sarah. You may recognise Sarah as one half of Fritz and Sarah, wedding dress designers based in Auckland. Sarah was married in Christchurch about 5 years ago, so a bit of a throwback talking through her wedding and planning process. We talk through their love story and a bit of Sarah's career and how she got into designing wedding dresses and then starting a business with Fritz. We chat through the whole process of designing and getting a wedding dress made. She has some amazing advice and super helpful tips. So we'll get straight into it. Enjoy episode 13 with Sarah. Hi Sarah, thanks so much for coming on the podcast today.
I am so excited.
So excited to chat to you. You have a unique perspective, being a wedding vendor yourself, and you're also married, so we're going to talk about both those things. But to start off with, we'll go into a bit of your story and your wedding. If you can tell me a little bit about you and your husband, how you guys met, and your life together.
So I feel like I probably have quite a different perspective than most of the guests you've already had on. So I've been married for coming up 6 years now. Feels like quite a lot longer than that. Me and my husband, we met, we went to middle school and high school together. And it's actually really funny because we have two older brothers and they are best friends, and they have been since I was 8 years old. And so they have been plotting Chris and I's life together since before we even met. They were like, we're going to be brothers, we're going to get our siblings together, and we're just going to be best friends forever. And I was always like, no, ew. Chris is like, ew. And then after we left school, actually, we got together at his brother's wedding because my brother was best man and we were both sober driving. And kind of ever since then, we've been inseparable. You know, that happens when you get married, right? And so we got married about 5.5 years ago now, down in Christchurch. And it's quite an interesting perspective looking back at a wedding. And now that we've been married for so long and we don't have kids together, but we have a cat. There's a baby, a little Chandler. We both made the move to Auckland up from Christchurch, and we were planning wedding long distance. So we were living up here, we were getting married down there. So we just super heavily relied on friends and family and people to help us out. And just a lot of air points were collected that year, you know.
Cool. Can you tell us a bit about your proposal story?
We were doing long distance at the time. I was living in Auckland because I had graduated uni or polytech, whatever you want to call it, and I took an internship up here for a bridal company, and it was 3 months long. And so I was like, I'm going to stay on regardless. I don't want to live in Christchurch. And Chris was still in Christchurch and he had a really good job. He was just finishing his apprenticeship as a welder, and he was kind of on track to become foreman, and he was at a really good company. And I was like, sorry babe, I'm moving, you can either get on board or not. And I think he was in denial, and so he proposed while I was still interning. So I hadn't been offered a job yet, and I flew down for the weekend, and I almost missed my flight, and he started panicking. I was like, it's just, I was there a month ago, it'll be fine. Traffic is just so bad. If I miss my flight, I'll just change it and come down next weekend. He was like, no, I'm going to rebook you another flight. You're going to come. You have to come. I was like, what is wrong with you? It's just another trip. I'll come next week. It will be fine. Anyway, I made it to the airport in time, and I got on my flight, and I was like, what's going on? And then what actually happened is my stepmother, she actually texted me on the Saturday morning because Chris had obviously gone and asked for my dad's permission. She actually texted me in the morning being like, happy engagement, congratulations on your engagement, before it had happened. So it was a little bit I think it took the wind out of his sails a little bit, but it meant I straight out, I was like, well, I've got to go get my nails done. So I just took it as like, I'm so type A. I'm like, it means I can plan this now, right? So I obviously went and got my nails done. And then it was really sweet. He like borrowed his friend's really nice car and we drove out like past Littleton, and he found this really cool like outdoor art gallery, like a sculpture art gallery out there. And we went out there, and he had like set up like some champagne glasses and like a little picnic, and he popped the question. And then what I didn't know is that his brother and sister-in-law were hiding in a tree taking photos the whole time. So that gave me the fright of my life, because they just come like running down this bank, like spraying champagne everywhere. And I was like, where did you come from? But it was really nice because it meant we got like actual proper photos of the moment. And yeah, so that was our proposal.
So good. Such a cool story, even if stepmom put in it a little
Yeah,
bit.
you know, like I think at the time it felt like a way bigger deal than it was. And like at the end of the day, I would have known by within a few hours, and you know, the end result is still the same.
Yeah, it was kind of coming.
Yeah, exactly.
So when it came to planning your wedding, did you were you always one of those girls that dreamed about it? Obviously you were already working in the industry, but yeah, did you have quite a specific vision and vibe that you wanted for your wedding? And yeah, what were the first steps going about planning?
Oh, that's such a hard question, because I was someone that had been like thinking of my wedding for years prior. Obviously, I thought a lot about the dress. Turns out there's a lot more involved in a wedding than a dress. Um, and I never saw our wedding venues before the wedding day. I was obviously living up north, and the family was down in Christchurch. So I sent Chris, my best friend, and my mum to go look at venues, and they just FaceTimed me basically. So that was like quite a tricky, because I'm very type A, and so I found it quite hard to like hand over and trust people. And it was just one of those things where I kind of had no choice. And I think like one of the hardest parts was picking a date that correlated, because we used two venues. So we used the Rangiruru School Chapel, because I really wanted to get married in a church. And it was 2018 or 2017 when we started looking at venues. So it was only like 6 years post earthquake, and pretty much all of the old heritage buildings were still red zone. They were still completely written off, and there were no new buildings open yet. So we were so limited with venue choice, especially venue choice within our budget. Like there was still super high end vineyards where you had to use their caterers, but like we were 21, we were paying for 80% of the wedding ourselves. We couldn't afford that. So that was kind of like the biggest thing, is that we ended up choosing a chapel, and then we found a vineyard out in Swananoa, which is like Rangiora way. And then we had the reception there, but they were great because we could bring in our own caterer, we could bring in our own BYO alcohol. So it was just like this huge cost saving thing, but it also added so many logistics. How do you get the guests from the city centre to like 45 minutes out? I don't know, like I couldn't find a bus that did it. Most of our guests were in Christchurch, so pretty much everyone had cars, so they just had to like carpool and have someone sober drive. And then it was things like, oh, glassware. Like I have to find glasses now, and I have to find cutlery and all of this stuff. But my biggest mistake was not actually speaking to the vendors. I didn't ask my caterer, oh, are you able to supply cutlery? I didn't ask the vineyard, oh, you have glasses, can I just hire those? And so I think that was like my biggest learning curve, and some advice I would have for people: ask your vendors first, don't stress about it, because it's what I did. And I spent so long being like, the logistics, it's so hard. And then at the end I just picked up the phone and they were like, oh yeah, use our glasses, they're this much per piece. And I'm like, done, that was easy.
What were the most important elements when planning the day? Did you have your top priorities? Obviously I would think the dress, but yeah, in terms of like vendors or different details, what was most important to you?
So I think the most important thing, obviously the dress was really important. I felt a lot of pressure on that with like all my friends and stuff. But a really important thing for us was to be around the people closest to us. So we had a really big bridal party. So we had 6 bridesmaids and 6 groomsmen. And that was like just such a highlight because you spend the whole day with the people, like your absolute nearest and dearest, and they just make everything so fun. And I know it's such a trend now to only have one person or to only like not have a bridal party. And I totally respect that for some people, that is completely what works best for them. But for us, it just made the whole day feel like such a party. And like we just got like Domino's pizza after the ceremony during photos. And we just had like wine throughout the day, and just it just made everything so much more like relaxed and fun, and it made things feel a lot less serious, which I really loved. The other thing we had was a videographer. I know this is like such a classic comment to be like, it was the best decision I ever made. But I can tell you, over 5.5 years, I've watched my video more than I've looked at any photo. Sorry, I know you're a photographer.
I think get both. Go for it.
Yeah, 100%. I would never say choose a videographer over a photographer, but it's just, I feel like once you've seen a photo, you've kind of seen it. But every time you watch a video, there's like hidden little things, and you really capture like the spirit of the day. And I just think that was one of the best decisions we ever made. And our videographer was actually a really old friend of ours, and they just brought like such great company to the day. And yeah, it's just something I so will never regret doing.
Nice. That's great advice. I think it's something that sometimes people skip, or it's like lower down the priority list if they have quite a tight budget or something. But yeah, I think it is a really good thing to invest in, and you probably will watch it more than you think.
100%. And even if you just get like, because I know they do packages and every videographer is different, and you can either get like the full ceremony or part of the reception or just a highlight video. And we got all of it. But the thing that surprised me the most that I watch every year is the speeches. Like it's such a, I did not expect that at all. And I think it's just something that when you're in that moment at the reception, you've had a few glasses of bubbles, you're pretty tired at this point. The day has gone by in such a whirlwind that the speeches kind of come, and you love them in that moment, but you often don't remember because it's such an intense day and there's so much happening. And it's actually like some of the sweetest and most sentimental things your friends will ever say to you. And to kind of lose it straight away is, I find, quite sad. So it was something like I'll treasure that forever.
It's so nice to have a record of it for sure, and just be able to go back to it. So can you talk to us about what you guys wore, and yeah, your dress? And did you make your own dress? Yeah, how you went about choosing?
So I did not make my own dress. I said before, I was a baby when I got married, so I was like basically interning. Like I just started out in the fashion industry. I'd done fashion school, but like politely, you come out of fashion school and you know 1% of the things you need to know for the industry. So I was working for Rue de Seine at the time, and I loved working for them. They were such a great company. But if you know Rue de Seine, you'll know their vibe and their style is super bohemian, really lace, really like beachy wedding. It's just not who I am at all. And they offered me like such a great staff discount. So my husband was like, yes, babe, get a Rue dress. Like, come on, you've got this. And then I was very fortunate, like even the production manager, he offered to make me a dress. And so I had this amazing resources and everything I needed in front of me. And I went to like 4 stores, which I find so valuable, and I'm so grateful I did this, because now being in the industry and having my own business, I actually know firsthand how it feels to be the bride. And I think that's just so valuable, and I'm so grateful I did it. And I fell in love with a dress. I was like, this is my dress. I had my mum, my 2 best friends with me, and we made a weekend of it, and it was just such a fun time. But I was like, this is it. I don't need to change anything. Like, why would I get someone to make me a dress when I have found the one? it's perfect. Yeah, I ended up getting it from Modes, and it was a Pronovius dress, and I still am obsessed with Pronovius. I think their tailoring and their fabrics and everything they do is just, you just can't beat it. It's just so beautiful. And yeah, and so I was like, why change anything? I found it.
Yes to the dress.
Yeah, I really had that moment.
Love that. And you talked a bit about your bridal party already. How did that process go with choosing them? Was it siblings, friends? And yeah, did you find that tricky? You just wanted to include everyone special?
So we ended up having 6 on each side because it all started with Chris, like the groomsmen. And I was like, I want my brother in the bridal party. So I've got one brother and I've got one sister, but my sister's like 8 years younger than me. So she was like, I should know how old. She was like 13 or 14 at the wedding. So she wasn't in the bridal party because she was just a little bit young. But I was like, I want my brother in the bridal party. No questions asked. So then Chris was like, well, if you have your brother, then that means I have to have my 3 brothers. He's like, so now we're at 4 people already. And he's like, well, I've got my 2 best guy friends that I would want there too. And I was like, all right, looks like we're doing 6. And I had a little bit of drama with my bridesmaids. So I had picked my 6. I found it really easy. They're all so close, all high school friends. Like, we were all part of the same friend group. Like, I still love every single one of them. And then it must have been like 3 months into wedding planning that they were like just shy of getting dresses. I don't think we got them dresses yet. And there was a little bit of a mishap within the friend group. And I won't go into too much detail, except I had to fire a bridesmaid,
Oh, no.
which is never a fun experience because I wasn't involved in any of the drama. It was all around a boy. It's fine. It's fine, right? Everybody's fine now. But it was just one of those moments where I was like, this friend was not in the wrong at all, and it would be so awful of me to ask her to stand next to this other person and just tell her to act like it's fine when this other person actually had done something like quite awful. So I had to fire her, and she was really great about it, and she was like, I totally respect why you're having to do this. But it was still not fun for anyone involved, and like our friendship was never really the same after that. But yeah, other than that, it was really easy to choose. And I really did love having a big bridal party, and the girls were all so great and supportive. But the only thing I will say about having a big bridal party is you need to just pick 1 or 2, your maid of honor and maybe like one other best friend, and make those girls your planning girls. Because trying to organize 6 people to be like, let's do a wedding planning day is impossible. I think that was something like a really big learning curve for me about friendships as well, is like, these girls have their own lives. It's not their wedding. And I see so many posts on like the wedding discussion group, and so many people that are like, my friends aren't helping enough, or my maid of honor's been so distant. And I'm like, be kind to your girls. They have their own lives, especially if they're single. It could be really hard for them watching another friend get married. And I actually had one of my girlfriends say to me after the wedding, she was like, our friendship is 1,000 times better now that you're not getting married. And at the time I was a bit like, oh, that's kind of like a weird thing to say. But I was the first of our friends to get married. And now that I've had friends get married after me, I totally get it. You're in such a wedding bubble. It's all you talk about. And I'm like, I respect it. I've been there. But it can be really hard on the friends to only feel like they're giving and you're only talking about a wedding. And so I think when it comes to like having a bridal party and having friends, just be kind to them. Just allow them to feel how they want to feel. And if they want to help plan, then amazing. But don't expect it from them.
That's such great advice. And yeah, I can see how just navigating all that friendship stuff, especially when you were like young 20s, and
yeah,
it's just a different era, like still growing up a little bit, but yeah, navigating all of that. Try and not bulldoze everyone with wedding planning all the time. Just think about your friends and what's going on for them too.
I know.
Cool. So what about your guests? How many guests did you have, if you can remember? And was that a difficult process narrowing that down?
So we had about 80 guests in the end. I am someone, I really wanted like a 60-person wedding. My husband comes from the biggest family on this planet. Like, I'm not even joking to you. His parents, his mum is like, okay, I could get this completely wrong here, but his mum is one of 8 and his dad is one of 7, or like the other way around. And so Chris has 97 blood cousins.
Wow.
And then I'm not even joking when I say most of them are married with like more than 2 or 3 kids. So the family was huge. So it was such like a shock. I have 4 cousins, none of which were invited to the wedding because I'm not close with them. So it was like such quite a culture shock of like, oh, I'm entering someone else's family, and this is not your average family. This is half of New Zealand. So learning like and having to, I want to say, like, make that compromise was, I want to say, like, my first thing of like, oh, this is marriage, this is what comes with entering someone else's family, and you have to respect that, and you have to respect that this is who they are and they want to be invited and that's how they do things. So when I was young and strong headed, and we argued about it a lot, but in the end it all worked out, and we had about 80 guests, and we actually did, I don't know if it's that common, but it was quite common in like our circles to do, you would have like a ceremony guest list, which is basically an open invite. I know it's quite common in like Christian circles where you would just kind of invite a lot of the church and the parents, friends, and that kind of thing. So we did an open invite for the ceremony, and then we had about an 80-person guest list for the reception. And then we had about 120 guest lists for the dance. So people could join us for speeches, they could join us for cake and for drinks and the dance. And I've been to so many weddings where it's been like that. And it's actually like, it's also great cost saving for the bride and groom as well, not having to pay for as many dinners. And it still means people can get to be included in actually like the fun part, which is the dance floor, right?
So good. You don't hear of that as much these days, I feel like, but yeah, it's a cool way to do it, and think about having dessert and dancing later if you want to include more people there. So can you tell us a bit about the big day and how it went down, and any like highlights or favorite moments from it?
Oh, so I've really had to like re-jog my memory thinking about this. It was just like so good start to finish. There was not a single thing that went wrong. I just remember so vividly, by like 10 o'clock, my whole face hurt from just smiling and laughing so much. I've never experienced anything like that before. But it's like the most surreal thing to have every single person you love in one room, right? It'll never happen again in your life. And it's so surreal. But we started the day hair and makeup, classic, like 6 a.m. get up, 2 makeup artists, 2 hairdressers. I think they had like 9 of us to get through. Photographer, videographer, but like it was just so much fun, just all your girls together, getting glammed up. Like, could you ask for anything better? We watched all the Friends wedding episodes. So we had Monica and Rachel's wedding playing. We had Phoebe and Mike getting married. And so that's just me. And that was like the best thing ever. And the ceremony obviously goes like so quickly. And we didn't do a first look, but again, like totally respect if people want to do a first look and if that works better for them. But for me, I just loved that, like walking down the aisle and seeing Chris and him seeing me for the first time on the wedding day. Like it just felt so traditional, and I'm not really a traditional person, but it was something that I just really like treasure. And it's just such a surreal moment. And then we went for like photos with the bridal party and got pizza, drank champagne, had a great time. And the reception was just, again, great. We had Canterbury Country spit roast do the dinners, which was just great. Like buffet, rate it 10 out of 10. Everybody loves a lot of food, it doesn't matter who they are. They love a good meal. So me and all the boys could eat as much as they wanted. And it was just like real good, hearty food. And just had like a great Spotify playlist, got everyone on the dance floor. which was just such a highlight. And I have so many amazing videos from our videographer of people on the dance floor, which is just the fun. I'll never post them on social media because that is mean, but it is just such a treasure for me. And we brought out like a whole bunch of like mini pie savories at like 10 o'clock, which everybody loved. But yeah, it was just a really great day with friends and family, and not really a single thing went too wrong. Not that I know of anyway.
Was there anything you found hard about the wedding planning process, or anything you look back on and regret or would do differently?
So, hindsight's a beautiful thing, right? 5 years later, I'll be very honest when I say a lot of it didn't matter. A lot of the stuff I stressed over, I can't even tell you. It doesn't matter. Don't get caught up on the small things, I personally loved wedding planning. I love weddings. I love planning. You put the two together and I was in my element. And it was, yeah, there's a lot of things I would do differently. I would change a lot of my vendors. Money was a really big thing that I think we got quite caught up on. Obviously, you get caught up on it. You have to have the money to have the big fancy wedding, right? And we didn't have it. So a lot of the vendors I would change. I would have splashed out on a better photographer. Our photographer wasn't cheap. I mean, this is almost 6 years ago, and I think she was like 3,800 or something. So it wasn't a high-end photographer back then, but it was not a budget photographer. And we hired her. We actually had a terrible experience in the end. And I won't name her. She doesn't do weddings anymore, so it's not relevant. But it took 6 to 8 months to get our photos back. We didn't get a single photo of Chris and I standing together smiling. Like, there was not a single portrait photo for our parents to frame. Like, some of the photos we got were amazing, and I do love them, but there were so many missing. And I kind of read a lot of reviews of people who used her in that industry, in that season, said the exact same thing. She never got the photos back. The ones she did, like, so many were missing. I don't know if she had a fallout with the second shooter, and because like there are photos that I'm like, I know she took because I remember seeing it, that we never got, like signing the registry and all that kind of stuff. So I'm like, I don't know if she lost a whole heap of photos or what happened. So I definitely think I would have done better research on a photographer and spent the money. It would have been so much more worth it. And like, we did DIY flowers. I think again I would have spent the money and gotten a florist to do it. Like some of the DIY stuff we did was great, but yeah, in hindsight, I'm a little bit like, oh yeah, I kind of wish we'd spent that a little bit more. Yeah, other than that, it was kind of just that vendor regret, I guess.
Oh, that's tough. I'm sorry you had that experience. That is not nice to hear at all, but yeah, I'm glad they're not doing weddings anymore, and that's awful. I hate hearing those stories.
Yeah, it's hard because a lot of vendors, the stuff doesn't happen until on the wedding day or post-wedding. So you don't get to see it leading up, and you don't actually get to know if you've gotten what you've paid for. It's something that I love about wedding dresses is you physically see it and you physically touch it and you know it's what you want leading up to the wedding. So there's still time. If we need to change anything, there's still time. But for photographers, florists, caterers, styling, like 90% of the vendors, it all happens on the day, and you just have to trust them so much.
Yeah, that's great advice as well, to just do your research really well and get to know your vendors, ask lots of questions, and look at their reviews, talk to other people that have used them if you can. It's the best thing you can do in advance. Can you talk a bit about your budget? It's going to be maybe not as relevant because it was a little while ago now, but yeah, did you have something that you were sticking to, even like a ballpark figure?
We absolutely did. So our budget was around 20,000. And I mean, like, I'll also fully acknowledge, living in Auckland, I work in the Auckland wedding industry. Christchurch weddings versus Auckland weddings, you're already looking at a completely different price point. But yeah, so we budgeted around 20,000, and I think we spent about 25,000. So we were pretty close to budget, which I think is not bad. Yeah, and I think with weddings it's quite hard because there's so many vendors, you go slightly over budget on every single vendor and suddenly you've bumped up by 10K. So you have to really like rein in on every single corner of the wedding. And I think that was something I found really hard. Yeah, but we also DIY'd. We DIY'd so much stuff. We did all the invites ourselves. We did the florals ourselves. We did like the styling ourselves. We had family friends do like the makeup, so they gave us a pretty good deal. They're like legit makeup artists, but they gave us a good price. The videographer gave us a good price, and you know, like there was a lot of areas that we did have a lot of help on, and so I will fully acknowledge that not every couple has that, but it's so hard to stay in budget.
It definitely is, but yeah, if you can get those little connections and yeah, there's little areas that you can save in and prioritize for spend and save. So yeah, it's got to get a bit crafty.
100%.
Did you guys go on honeymoon straight away, and what did planning that look like?
So we did, and this will be my biggest regret to this day, is we obviously had the wedding. So we live in Auckland. We flew down a week before the wedding. That was just the most chaotic week of my life. We then had the wedding. We stayed in the most beautiful accommodation. We actually went back to that accommodation this year for a holiday. It was so beautiful. It was the Peppers Clearwater Resort in Christchurch. If you ever want wedding night accommodation, that is the place to go. And so we spent 2 nights there, and then we got on a plane and went to Hawaii for like 10 days. And then we stopped over in Fiji for 3 days on our way back. And I completely regret our decision to do that. I wish we'd gone home and we had waited 6 months and then gone on a holiday, because you're so tied up with wedding planning, you completely forget to plan the honeymoon. I'm like, cool, it's booked. We'll figure it out when we get there. But half the fun of an overseas holiday is the planning and the anticipation and the like researching of like, oh, we can go to this place and we can look up here and we can go shopping here, and we just missed all of it. So the holiday was like so, I want to say like half-assed a little bit, because we hadn't planned anything for it, and we just got there and we were like, oh, what do people even do in Hawaii? Like we haven't even thought about it. So I really wish we had just like spent a few nights after the wedding together, or gone on like a local long weekend and then done like a proper holiday like 6 to 8 months later, because I just think we would have enjoyed it so much more. And you're also so tired after the wedding that then getting on a plane and being jet lagged is just not a fun time.
Oh, that is, I hear that a lot, that people are just like so tired, and it's
Yeah.
nice to just like have a chill local few days away, and yeah, maybe go away later. So that's great advice, something to consider. Were there any like helpful websites or resources that you used, if you can remember back planning the wedding, like how you found your vendors and stuff like that?
So that was something I actually found really hard, is there wasn't a lot of resources. I hadn't had many friends get married at this point, and the ones I had, I didn't love their like wedding style. It was just really different to mine. So I didn't want to use their vendors. And so I don't even know if the wedding discussion group on Facebook was a thing yet. While Instagram was a thing, it wasn't what it is now for vendors advertising. So only a select few were like really big on Instagram and posting all the time, and like Pinterest didn't really have any New Zealand vendors on it. So you're kind of like, Google was what I had to use, and I think that's why I regret a lot of my vendors, is because I didn't have the pages and pages on Instagram, all the reviews, like tagged posts, I find is so helpful on Instagram now, because you actually get to see like, this is what the bride is posting, and she's obviously really happy because she's tagging them, and she's written like, oh my goodness, I loved this X, Y, and Z. But I used podcasts so much. That was like my biggest, I want to say like inspiration, because while there were no New Zealand podcasts like there is now, there was just some that it was just really great they were like American and I think UK, but it was just like real think out of the box kind of ways to plan. And so that would be the main thing I used. But like now, I'm still on all those pages. Wedding discussion group, amazing. I think if you're struggling to look for vendors, it's just the best thing. Brides are so willing to help, is something I just love to see. And they're so kind, and they're so like, oh no, this person was absolutely amazing, and like you've got to go check them out. And like you can just see that they really love their vendors. And I think it's just so cool, and what an amazing resource for brides now.
So good. It's yeah, social media has been amazing like that, just being able to have that direct access to
Yeah.
people in your same season, getting married in the same country,
Yeah.
city, even your venue, just to, yeah, be able to directly talk to them, get recommendations. So put a little link to that group.
It's such a current, like Instagram is such a current portfolio too. Like if you go onto Vena's website, often websites aren't updated from current. I know mine is not. I should really get better at that. But you know, it's sometimes a little bit old. Sometimes the photos look a little bit outdated. The reviews might be a couple years old. Whereas Instagram, it's a live feed. It's stuff that they did last week. It's stuff that they did the month prior. And so it's such a current capture of what they are as a vendor. And I think that's just such a helpful tool and resource for brides.
You've given us a lot of amazing advice already, but yeah, is there anything that you would say to couples planning their wedding right now? Any advice?
Oh, look, I have so much like dress tips and tricks and stuff. But I think like I've probably already covered it. Like my two real main bits of advice would be nice to your friends. I mean, talking about the wedding discussion group, I see a lot of people being like, oh, so and so's not helping enough, or my maid of honor isn't being there. And I just think just be kind. It'd be really nice to the people around you. Weddings can be really stressful, and I will be the first to acknowledge that, but it's not worth losing a friendship over. Obviously, there are things that happen that may be completely out of a wedding thing that maybe that person just needs to move on. But when it comes to wedding stuff, it's not worth a wedding. You're getting married, you're engaged for like a year, maybe two at the max. You have the whole rest of your life that you're going to want that friend around for. Just be forgiving, give people a bit of grace, especially family members too. And then my other piece of advice would be to be organized. People are going to kill me for saying this, because there are some people out there that just really hate organization, but it is the biggest stress-free thing that you can do. Book your appointments early, book in your vendors early. Don't leave it till the last minute. Have a run sheet for the day. I will put that in big capital letters here. It helps your vendors, it helps your family, it helps your bridal party, it helps everybody involved. And it's something 5 years later, to this day, people will comment and be like, your wedding was so stress free because you had a run sheet and it was so organized. And if you're not an organized person, ask someone to help you. Ask a sister, your mom, a friend, a vendor even. Get a day of coordinator to do it for you. But I just think it's so, so important, because people haven't been thinking about the wedding for the 12 months that you have. They haven't turned over every detail in their head the way that you have. So you need to put it on paper for them.
Such great advice. And then it just makes it so much more chilled when it comes to the day. It's all done, organized, and flows way smoother.
Yeah, 100%.
There's so much good advice in there. Is there anything else you want to talk about with your wedding or married life now? Otherwise, we'll go on to chatting about dresses a bit more.
Yeah, we can go and talk about dress. I feel like it's the most I've talked about my wedding in years.
You covered a lot. It was great. So you have your own business with Fritz and Sarah.
I do.
If you can start by telling us, you sort of went into a bit of your background with interning and study and stuff, but yeah, how you got started in the industry, bit of your journey and what led you to today.
So I have a real classic story of like my grandmother sewed, and so like I grew up sewing a little bit. My first ever job was I think I might have been like 10 years old. I would like sew up like little wheat bags, the like microwavable heat packs, because my mum was a physio, and so I would sell them at her physio for like $10 a pop, and I would get cash. And I remember learning that I then had to spend that money to buy the fabric and the wheat to then resell it. And I was just like, this is absolute crap. Why would anybody do this? So I started off sewing from like a really young age, and I always wanted to do it as a job, but I was like, there's no way, like there's no jobs in it. It's New Zealand, it's the fashion industry, like whatever. And then like I just remember so clearly, I think I was in like year 12 at school, and my dad was like, you could do this as a job, right? Why don't you go to fashion school? I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, you could do this. And I was like, no, but what do you mean? It's like Jennifer Lawrence. I'm like, what do you mean? And so I ended up leaving school early, and I went to fashion school in Christchurch at what is now ARA. So I did 3 years of like very intensive learning there, and it was really, really hard. I will not lie at all. There is like 10% of theory and computer work behind this course. It was so practical. From you interned, and then from your internship, you had to get a brief, design a collection, pattern make the collection, do the photo shoot, do the runway, and you do that twice in your final year. And it was really intense, but it meant I actually learned such practical skills. And so after I graduated, I moved to Auckland, and I got an internship at Rudisane, where Rudisane is such a great company because they're production based. They're one of the only production houses in New Zealand that do, I want to say, they're not mass production, but it is production on a mass scale. So it was the perfect entry into the bridal industry. And I started there, and I would do fabric QC as an intern. So you would unroll the roll of fabric, you would look for the flaws, and then you would roll it back up. And then you would take the next roll of fabric and you would unroll it. And so, yeah, that was really great. And I ended up moving up there. I got offered a full-time job, and so I made the permanent move to Auckland, and Chris moved up with me. And then I worked more of like a production line there. So I was a cutter. So as the orders came in, I would take each dress in each size and cut them, and then hand them over to the sewer. And I worked there for like 2 years, but I just got like a little bit bored. It was just a little bit production, you did the same thing every day. But it also meant like I got such an eye for detail. They're so meticulous about quality there. And so I learned quality control. I learned a lot about production. And it was my first kind of experience in the world of bridal. They don't really do bridal at fashion school. And so it was, but like I was so hooked. I was like, bridal, that's where I want to be. I just love that you can spend the time on a garment. I love that people love the garment. It's not a pair of jeans that they're going to get rid of next season. And it's production work. So many corners of the fashion industry in New Zealand are computer based, and it's offshore, whereas this is hands-on. You sew, you cut, you quality check, your hand sew, like you physically hold a needle and thread for most of your day. And then I went and I worked for a couple of other companies. I did an alterations company that is now closed down. So they did bridal alterations and general clothing. So that's where my alteration background comes from. Like I learned everything from jean hem to wedding dresses to, everything in between. And then I went and worked at another company where I was an assistant designer. So that's where I learned like design background. And I did a bit of alteration work there as well with brides and sewing. And so having kind of like COVID happened, and everything just kind of went a bit chaotic at that time of life, as everybody knows. But it was actually at that job that I met Fritz, and we just like really hit it off. And we both kind of started like dreaming of like, like maybe we could do this, and we could do this on our own. And just kind of through COVID, we were like, now's actually the right time. People are really wanting local. They're wanting people that can move with everything just so quickly. So we ended up leaving and starting up our own thing, and we started working out of Fritz's home in Parnell, which was, nothing tests a friendship like that. And yeah, so we started with alterations was kind of still is one of our main areas of the business. But like, I just feel that a lot of companies are like, you need this much time to have a dress altered, and it's very like set in stone. And with COVID, we were getting people that were like, I need my dress in 3 days. Like I've got a flight out of here and I need my dress. And we were like, okay. And it was just like such a crazy time. We were working out of a house, and of course we were like a close contact business. So we couldn't open in level 3. There was a lot of reasons why we couldn't open. And then there was like a stage where we were allowed to be a close contact business, but outdoors. So we would like lay calico out on the deck, and we would see like super, super urgent clients outside. We would like move a mirror outside, and we were all masked up. And like, I just think what a crazy season that was. Like, if you think about it now, you're like, was that even real?
Bizarre.
I know. So yeah, and now we've got our shop in Parnell, on Parnell Road, which we absolutely adore. And every day I go to work, it's like a pinch me moment. I'm like, is this really what I do for a living? Is my name really on the door? And so yeah, now we have alterations, which we still do. It's a huge sector of the business. It's a part of the business I really love. And we also have bespoke. So we've done we do custom made dresses. So for girls that have gone around and they've gone and looked at all these dresses, and they still just have not found what they're looking for. Or they're like, I love the neckline of this dress and the fabric of this dress and the skirt of this dress. And they're like, I just haven't found them all mashed together in one dress. And so that's kind of where we come in, and we'll do custom. So it's made to measure, full bespoke. We do like 5 or 6 fittings with them. And I really love that process, because it means we get to know the brides. Like, we see them 5 or 6 times, and you really get to know them. You see them at their best, you see them at their worst. And so you just have like a real connection, and you make a real relationship with them. And we're actually just about to launch the like more of a ready to wear range of our brand. So we have just shot our new collection. I don't know when this episode is being released, but we shot the new collection last week, and it is being launched on the 27th. I should really check if that's right, but I think it's the 27th of this month. So it officially means brides can come to us and try on our samples, and they could either order one of those dresses, or they can make as many changes to them as they like and just use it as a base and be like, oh, I do love this top, but I love the skirt of that dress. Can we mash them together? So you can kind of fully customize those as well. So it's borderline bespoke, but not designing quite from scratch. So we're really, really excited about that chapter that we're about to move into.
It's so exciting. We'll definitely link to all of that so people can check it out. And yeah, amazing. You offer all those different services for pretty much whatever people are looking for. So can you talk about a bit of a realistic timeline for brides when it comes to wedding dress? Maybe, talking about that bespoke dress journey. You've kind of talked about how many fittings they need, and how much time do they need? What's that process look like leading up to their wedding?
So obviously the more time, the better. At the end of the day, the more time you give us, the more organized we can be, the more options you have. We kind of ideally 6 to 8 months is ample. Earlier, even better. As soon as you start crossing that kind of like 4-month mark, the things that are limited, it's not the dress and it's not the work. We do everything in our workroom in Parnell. So it's not like we're waiting on things, but it does limit us on fabric. There are things that we may not be able to get here in time. It does mean that your fittings, you need to be a lot more available. Like, if we're like, this is when your fitting needs to be, your fitting will need to be on that week. If you're busy and if you have a hectic schedule, then try and give us as much time as possible, because then we can actually be flexible with your fittings. And we're like, this month would be great, like, give us the time. But we see people that are really hectic, and they're like, oh, I can't make a fitting this time and this time and this time. And we're like, okay, but then when are you going to come in? Like, when are we going to see you? Like, it's a dress, you need to be here. It's just that kind of thing that I don't think people really take into account. Like, if you want something rushed, you do have to be available to do those fittings. But kind of that 6 to 8 month mark is just absolutely the perfect amount of time. But if you're also available and you're like, I'm getting married in 3 months, we'll be like, we will do it. We will sign us up. We don't wait. A lot of bridal stores have a lot of lead times because the dresses come overseas, and then you do need to allow a month for alterations. There are no alterations in the bespoke service. You get your dress 2 weeks before your wedding. It is yours. It fits you like a glove. But it just does limit things like fabrics, and you just have to be flexible.
That's good for people to know. And do you see, are there any like common mistakes that brides make when it comes to wedding dresses, or maybe things you've seen in the past?
So I wouldn't say there are any common mistakes. There are big ones that jump out to me that I've seen a handful of times. Like one would be people that get pressured into buying a dress. I have seen at the alteration step, so not bespoke ones that we have done, but in alterations we've seen brides just burst into tears because their mum or their sister really wanted them to get this dress and they now don't like it and it's too late to get another one. This is actually something I did personally, and a really big bit of advice is don't say yes to the dress that day. Go back by yourself 2 or 3 days later, a week later, doesn't matter when, go back by yourself, try it on, make sure you feel good in it, make sure you love it, make sure it's not the champagne, make sure it's not the hype, make sure it's not the excitement, because it is such an exciting day when you go with all your girlfriends. But just go back on your own, just ask for like a 30-minute appointment. Like if you're buying a dress, that appointment will be free. So just to really, really ensure that in your own space and in your own time that you really love it. It's something that I did, and it's something I will never regret doing because I think it's so crucial. The other thing that we see a lot in the alterations process is people that can't move in their dress. They did not think about it. In the store that they tried it on, it was probably way too big or way too small, and it was clamped in. And of course, when something's clamped in, it looks quite different than how it might do in the real day. Like if it's got off the shoulder sleeves, you probably don't realize that you can't actually lift your arms. And unfortunately, that can't be fixed in alterations. Off the shoulder sleeves are going to limit you. If you've got a choreographed arm, don't buy an off the shoulder dress, or get a reception dress, get a second look, or just get something for your first dance. Or we see a lot of like people that get like a satin or a Mikado strapless dress, and then they are like, oh, but it feels too tight, or I can't take a deep breath in it. And it's like, yeah, because it's a strapless dress that needs to be held up. While there are things that you can do, and obviously an alterations will make it fit you as best as it can be done, it's still never going to feel like like a cotton top or something. Like it's still tight, it's still stiff, it's still a corset. It's not going to be the most comfortable thing you've ever worn. So again, just like take time in the dress before you buy it, and sit in it, move in it. Or if you have friends that have worn something similar, ask them how they felt on the day, and just kind of think a little bit more about the practicality of the dress as well.
It's so important. It's something people forget about as well, but you don't want to be uncomfortable for your entire wedding day. That would be horrible.
Yes.
So you've talked about how you get to know the brides quite well, especially with all those fittings, and it can be quite an emotional, vulnerable process choosing your dress or getting it made. Do you find yourself like supporting brides through this, and how is that whole process?
Oh, it's actually a part of the process I love, like, because I just think it's such a special time, and you do see brides at their best and their worst. You see them on their very stressed day, and then you see them on the really excited moments of like, oh my goodness, this is my dress. And so I think it really is just like a to and from relationship. And just, I also think there's a lot to be said for like managing expectations when it comes to a lot of portions of the wedding day, and actually just taking them through step by step. And part of the reason why we do bespoke is because we see so many girls that are like, oh, I customized my dress when I got it ordered, and then I didn't see it for 6 months, and I'd never seen it because I'd made these customizations, and then it arrived and they're either not quite happy with it, or it's not quite what they thought, so then they have to pay more for alterations to get it how they wanted it. So the bespoke process is we see you every month. Like the dress grows on you. We do a calico fitting first, which is just this like awful duvet cover of a fabric. It doesn't look pretty. Nobody feels good in a calico fitting. But it means you can see the proportions on you, and you can see how low the neckline's going to be before it's all finished. And you have room to kind of make changes, and you have room to change with the dress. There's also room to change weight. because I think that is a huge, huge thing for girls, is they want to try and lose weight before the wedding, or if they've had a baby recently, or if they're breastfeeding, or there's so many reasons why bodies change. And it's really daunting to buy a dress 8 months before their wedding and be like, I don't know what size I'm going to be. And then I don't want to have to fork out $1,500 on alterations if I lose all this weight, but I don't want to take the risk of ordering a smaller size. So it's kind of like that thing that we really just hold their hand through. And we're like, this month, this is what we're focusing on. You don't need to stress about your weight. You don't need to stress about shoes. We just want you to think about fabric. Like, that's all we want to talk about today. And so it's a real hand holding process, which I just love.
So good. And I feel like you guys are the perfect people for that. And I've heard many glowing reviews as well.
Oh, that's so kind.
Is there any other little details or tips that you want to share with people when it comes to choosing their wedding dress and the whole process?
So I think again, kind of touching on what I just said before, of like, don't buy the dress the first day you find it. Don't plan on buying a dress that first day. If you find your dress and you love it, absolutely amazing, but you don't have to put a deposit down that day. You don't have to say yes. You don't have to sign the contract that day. It's a sale. They'll take you at any time, Just go and be like, I'm going to have a great day. We're going to do brunch. We're going to have bubbles. I'm just going to have a really fun day with my girls, and do exactly that. Have a really fun day, but it takes all the pressure off, because it also means if you don't find your dress, you don't feel at the end of the day like, oh no, like I didn't find what I was looking for. And you can kind of just go from there, rather than like just feeling that extreme pressure, which I know I hear a lot about. So that would kind of be like my main thing, is just don't plan on buying the first day you start looking.
Amazing. I hear a lot about people getting decision fatigue as well. Like maybe it's hard to get everyone together if they're bringing like their bridal party and their mum, and so they book in like 6 different stores to visit in one day, but
it's a bit much,
overwhelming and tiring, and you're not going to be able to make good decisions by the end of that day. So
no, I would say like 3. 3 is like the golden number to start with 3 and then reevaluate after that 3.
Cool. Are there any other little tips or hacks for people like on the day or around their dress?
Oh my goodness, I have so many of these. So I'm just going to like ramble off some. So first one, don't wear a bra on the morning of your wedding. You get strap lines, you get marks on your back, especially if you have an open back dress or a strapless dress. Things like, don't wear fake tan to your appointments. Fake tan comes off on the dresses. Nobody wants that on their sample dresses, but also you don't want it on your dress if it's like your first or second fitting. Just try and steer clear. Light makeup is great. Wear in your shoes. That is so important. Wear plasters. Just wear plasters on the morning of the wedding. Don't wait till you get blisters. Just put on the plasters first. Spanks are not seamless. Seamless underwear is very different to Spanx. If your dress is tight and not lace, so if it's some kind of crepe dress, you probably can't wear Spanx. They're probably going to show through. Buy Spanx and test it with the sample before you buy the dress, because if you don't feel confident to not wear Spanx, then maybe just think about the dress and just check that you're okay with lines. Speaking from experience, I have Spank lines in every single wedding photo of mine. I wish somebody had just told me to ditch them. Other things are like your veil, it's gonna fall off. Show one of your bridesmaids how to just pop it back in your hair. Get your hairstylist in the morning just to show you. It will always fall off. Someone will step on it, the wind will blow. It's gonna happen. Bustles are another thing. Get one of your girls, bring them to your final appointment, or get someone to video it at your final appointment. We do this all the time. We either draw you a diagram, we get someone to film it and practice it before the wedding. They're not super complicated, but if you've never done one up before, they can feel a little bit unfamiliar, especially if you've had a glass of champers. So just like practice that. That's really good too. Going to the bathroom is always a little bit complex. If your dress is tight to like the knee, you're going to have to take the whole dress off. Just prepare for it. Take someone to the bathroom with you. If your dress is puffy and a little more A-line, you want to actually like pick up the front of your dress and you want to sit facing the toilet. It's very unglamorous. No one pretends that it is, but it's the best way to do it. And just make sure you have everything on hand. My cellar water is amazing at taking makeup off dresses. Especially if your dress is white and like not a champagne color, I basically had a face print on the corner of my dress because everybody hugs you and they're all wearing makeup. So I literally had eyelashes like on my dress. So just have some micellar water and like a Q-tip on hand just to kind of clean it up a little bit. It works such a treat because you don't need any water and it doesn't leave any residual. Oh, look, I could honestly go on for hours, but I think that is probably enough without overloading the listeners.
So helpful. That's, some really good things for people to take away. Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm so excited for people to hear this. So many nuggets of wisdom and amazing.
Oh, I'm excited. Thank you so much for having me.